Yeah, okay. We're right to go? Okay, well, look, thank you very much to all of you for coming out today to talk about this matter, which is obviously about the bill that I have just tabled in the House of Representatives and the similar bill that the Greens will be tabling, I think, today, Penny?
Yes, we'll be moving
later today in the Senate, both of which, in essence, aim to legislate in ways that will prevent a repeat of the Robodebt disaster. Now, there's a number of speakers, so I think we, members of the Parliament, will speak only briefly, and then we'll hear from some very important people. Kate Allingham, who's the CEO of Economic Justice Australia, and in fact was one of the very, very first people in the country to identify the problems with Robodebt. Therese Edwards from Single Mother Families Australia. Kelly Court, representing the Australian Council of Social Services. Kristen O'Connell from the Anti-Poverty Centre. And then I think most importantly, to hear from a couple of people with lived experience of Robodebt. So when I say most importantly, because at the end of the day, this is a human story, even more than it's a political story. Because you'd recall that Robodebt destroyed the lives of thousands of people, literally destroyed the lives of thousands of people, and resulted in the suicide of an unknown number of people. It is a human tragedy first and foremost. Now, the bill that I've tabled today, seconded by my colleague Helen Haines from the seat of Indi, it has numerous threads. I think the most important element of it is that it would legislate a change to procedures and responsibilities to pivot Services Australia from being an organisation focused on enforcement and punishment and instead become a client-focused organisation which is there very much entirely to support and help members of the community when they need that help. So it's very much a cultural change, but it would be legislated in the responsibilities of, among other people, the Secretary of the relevant department. Other key parts of the bill is it would ensure that any automated process has a human element, that ultimately a human would oversee it, and also that the clients of Services Australia would know it's an automated process and know what their rights are to seek review and so on. It would also reinstate the 6-year maximum time period for debt recovery. We've got this ludicrous situation at the moment, not just with Robodebt, but even currently with income apportionment, where debts are being kept on the books for decades, back to the 1990s. I mean, that's an absolute absurdity. And there are other elements which I'll let people speak to. So that's what we're on about. I'll now invite Helen Haines to speak. Helen was very kind to second the bill and spoke to the bill in the House of Representatives this morning.
Well, thank you very much. And I was very proud to second this bill in the House of Representatives, and I commend Andrew for his work in bringing this forward to the Parliament. Because let's be clear, social security services should be a safety net, not a dragnet. And what we've seen over the course of time during the Royal Commission into Robodebt and the 2 years since is the catastrophic impacts when the human beings who should be overseeing consequential decisions have not been overseeing consequential decisions. We need to make sure that vulnerable people are not set against a giant big government computer. So I'm very pleased to second this bill, very pleased to champion alongside my colleagues here today, but most importantly, standing side by people who have experienced the wrath of government on the Robodebt fiasco. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. I first of all want to say a big thank you and give huge credit to Economic Justice Australia and Kate, who have played a huge part in drafting this bill. And I also want to say thank you to the member for Clark and the member for Indi for bringing this bill into the House, and I'd be really proud to move it in the Senate. It's been 2 years since Robodebt, and still the Labor government has failed to implement all of the recommendations, and they are still treating people on income support like criminals. They talked a good game when Scott Morrison was in charge, but now they're actually responsible for the people on income support and our welfare system. and they really need to start acting like it. I have met with people who've lost family members to Robodebt, and I've met other victims of Robodebt, and I don't think it can be underestimated the ongoing trauma that people who were involved in that system continue to experience today. People who have panic attacks when they need to walk into a Centrelink office, people who are avoiding even utilising our social safety net because they are too traumatised by the experience that they've gone through that period. And keeping in mind now too that this Labor government is continuing to pursue debts from people due to automated systems and due to systems that they know are unlawful or make errors. So this bill is ready to go. The Greens stand with the crossbench, and we invite Labor to actually take action, to really step up to the plate and do what they need to do, which is finally implement all of the recommendations of the Robodebt Royal Commission so that we stop punishing people on income support and actually have a social security system that actually lifts people up and cares for them.
Debt remains one of the key inquiries that our community legal centres who specialise in social security law deal with every day. People are still receiving letters in their letterboxes or in their MyGov out of the blue telling them that they owe thousands of dollars, not providing them with hardly any information about why the debt occurred, and then having to go through the process, usually while their payments have already been reduced, to prove that they do not owe the debt, which is very difficult if you actually don't understand why the debt has been put in place in the first place. It's even more difficult if the debt is from years and years ago, if the debt is because of administrative error within that Services Australia has caused, or if the debt is due to coercive control or family violence. This bill today goes towards fixing those issues and making it easier for those debts to be waived. It's been over 2 years since the Robodebt Royal Commission released recommendations, and while Economic Justice Australia is very happy to be standing here today, it is really disappointing that today is the first time that we're seeing legislation in the House dealing with this. We can't rely on the goodwill of the government ministers or the culture of an organisation today to ensure that Robodebt doesn't continue or that people still aren't being adversely affected by debts. What we need is really strong legislative reform, because that proves to the community that the government is serious about actually fixing some of the issues that Robodebt raised, and it protects people in the long term. So we very much appreciate the Greens and Mr. Wilkie and Helen Haines today, and we really, really hope that the government reads this legislation and allows it to be debated and voted on in the House.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I've also just got to put my phone on stop messaging me because it suddenly started blowing up. My name's Kristen O'Connell. I'm a spokesperson for the Anti-Poverty Centre, and I rely on Centrelink payments to live. Welfare recipients are hurt and offended about Labor using Robodebt victims for political gain and then abandoning Robodebt Royal Commission recommendations when they thought that the community had moved on. This is not a political issue. This is a human issue. The human impact of Robodebt did not come because of how debts were calculated. They came because of what it means when you receive a debt and you have nothing more left in your budget. Poor people, when you are poor and you get a debt of any kind, let alone an old one, it hits you like a lightning bolt. You spin into crisis, and for many of us, we don't know where to turn for help. Most welfare recipients don't know about community legal centres and places like Economic Justice Australia where you can go and find information. Most of us don't even know we have rights. It is shameful that the government has taken so long to act after promising people who were affected by Robodebt and the rest of us who fear receiving a debt that is a decade or 2 decades old and done nothing about the recommendations that they accepted. government knows as well as we do that the status quo leads to more deaths, more suicides, more homelessness, more distress. It's also unnecessary. They know that this system needs to change, that the culture of Services Australia needs to change, that it needs to be reformed into an organisation that cares about payment accuracy, not debt collection, that makes sure we get the right amount, whether we were underpaid or whether we have been overpaid, that makes sure that there are much more fair and reasonable rules in place so that when you do have an administrative error, whether it was from Centrelink or whether it was from you, that you aren't punished for that. A system that means when you can't pay right now, that you have time, that you have room to breathe until you are in a position where you can afford to pay. It is obscene that we are standing here after the government promised to act on this, not just after the Royal Commission, but also in its election campaign in 2022. I'm just lost for words. So yeah, we urge the government to take seriously the bill that has been put forward today by Andrew Wilkie, by the Greens, and to work with welfare recipients for bigger reforms over the long term that mean we can be safe, that we have security, and that we have control over our own lives.
Good morning, Therese Edwards from Single Mother Families Australia. Of course, we presented our work to the Royal Commission. It had the fingerprints of debt and distress all over that. And really simply what we can do today is just pause any collection. If it has a sniff of robo-debt, don't go forward with it. Allow people to discuss, to work it out. The real life consequences of debt is anxiety, depression, and the debt follows you and it stops you from entering into other agreements. And most importantly, what sometimes gets lost, if you have a debt owing to the government, you cannot access other social security, really critical supports. So really simple changes, and I commend the cross party focus on this, and thank you to EJA for this critical work. Thanks.
Come back in here. I mean, not touch it. No, you're good. We didn't mean that. Come and just.
So much.
No worries, of course. Just as close as you can. You'll be.
As an original New South Wales person, I agree. Hi, my name is Aradia Saina. I am a board member for Single Mother Families Australia, and I run a group called Women in Poverty. Robodebt is something that I have seen firsthand the effects on people who are receiving welfare or who are on social security payments, and the associated trauma that comes with Robodebt is going to be a long time in healing. Those debts will follow those people for years. Not just follow them in a financial sense, but they will follow them in terms of their mental health. It is traumatic enough dealing with Services Australia to actually have the thought of Robodebt hanging over your head at any time just adds to the uncertainty of what is already an uncertain life for a lot of people who live below the poverty line and a lot of people who are on income support. We would like to thank the crossbenchers and the Greens for coming forward with this bill, and we're hoping that everybody will support it. Thank you.
Will there be any questions? Yep, okay. I'll just offer one closing comment before going to questions. This is a live issue. This isn't an issue from the previous government or previous governments. It is as unresolved now as it was 2 years ago when the Royal Commission brought out its findings. We still have cultural work to be done within Services Australia, and there still needs to be a raft of legislative changes. And I think between the lot of us, we've touched on just about all of those legislative changes. One thing that we brushed over perhaps quickly was that the bill would also ensure that debts can be waived much more easily, that there won't be the legislative roadblocks for Services Australia staff when they want or need to waive a debt. So if this bill was to become law, if the Commonwealth makes an error, then we won't have the hurdles in the future to having that debt waived. Similarly, this bill would ensure that people fleeing family and domestic violence, and if they've got a debt, particularly as a result of coercion, that it will be much easier for Services Australia to waive that debt. There is so much that needs to be done from a legislative point of view to ensure that the recommendations of the Royal Commission are implemented and we won't have a repeat of Robodebt in the future. It's also a live issue because there was in fact a recent court case which ruled that income apportionment, a practice that's been used by government agencies since the 1990s at least, is still in place and it is still illegal. So, Robodebt is not lost to history. It is a live issue. The problems that have been revealed, including in a court case very recently, are as live today as they've ever been. The government has to act. Otherwise, everything that the government has said over the last few years has just been paying lip service, and that's all it is. So happy to go to questions now, preferably not of me, but any of a number of our guests that have come along.
Are you concerned about how AI could be used in debt collection, in service delivery more broadly?
Am I continuing as an ongoing issue?
Are you concerned about how AI could be used?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, there'll be a great temptation for government agencies to embrace AI to further cut the workforce. And of course, that was the whole problem with Robodebt. It was a reliance on automation, badly designed automation, and I don't have any confidence at the moment that any future AI process will be any better. I mean, sure, we will embrace AI. Sure, AI can be used to improve government services, but we must always have human oversight of the automated process. And that's what this bill and Penny's bill in the Senate would do. It would always ensure that whatever the process is going forward, there would be human oversight, that the client of Services Australia would know it's an automated process, would know what their rights are, would have easy recourse to appeal and to question things. So I hope that answers the question.
Can I answer that? Well, you go, Kate, and then I'll add something.
Okay. I was just going to say that another one of the recommendations within the Robodebt Royal Commission was to create a framework for the use of automation, and I think should be included AI within government services. We are still seeing real harms with automation within social security, particularly around employment services. There's been a recent matter where people have been compensated, where nearly 1,000 people had their payments unlawfully cancelled or suspended because of some issues around the automation and lack of discretion being applied. And we think it should be an absolute priority of the government to be putting this framework in place before rolling out automation and AI, particularly if it is social security recipients or other people who, due to being in crisis situations, struggle to advocate. So of all these people that were impacted by this particular automation, not a single person complained. And I think that's a really telling, that people are having their payments cancelled or suspended and they're not complaining because they're not able to. And what we don't want to see is automation and AI being rolled out, tested on social security recipients, and then only realising that there are issues after thousands of people have been harmed.
Can I just add to that too? We heard at the last estimates that the government and the department cannot give us an assurance that the way in which debts are being collected and being calculated is lawful. their words were something along the lines of they can't be confident that it's being rolled out in a way that's consistent with the legislative framework. That means that it's potentially unlawful. And we have a situation where they are continuing to automate systems where their systems have failed. There are around 55 errors in the current system, and whilst they have paused cancellations, they have not paused suspensions of people's payments. And we know that thousands of people are getting their payments suspended under this system. And what we also know is that if you are living week to week on income support payments that are below the poverty line, then a suspension is just as catastrophic as a cancellation. And so in addition to the government needing to walk the walk in passing this bill, we also need the government right now to pause payment suspensions because they are not confident that this system is lawful, and yet they are still subjecting people on income support to suspensions, which can mean becoming homeless, not being able to eat, not being able to get medication. And that is something that they can act on today.
The Anti-Poverty Centre, the Australian Unemployed Workers Union and other welfare recipients have been campaigning for many, many years to get governments to understand the harm being done by these payment suspensions. We are talking about between 300,000 and 600,000 payment suspensions issued per quarter. Some of those are automated. Some of them are inflicted by unaccountable private job agency workers who don't even know the rules themselves, let alone treat people fairly. This is an example of the government continuing the culture that Commissioner Holmes called out in her Royal Commission report. She said that the politicians are setting the tone. Politicians are the ones demonising welfare recipients that encourage the community to think of us as less human, to think of us as disposable, to think of us as people who don't deserve to be treated with respect. And right now they have their own version of this crisis. It's a huge scale crisis. People have been screaming about this for a long time, and there is absolutely no excuse for the government pretending it does not know what's going on, and they are obsessed with protecting profits of providers, and that is the only reason this is happening.
Any further questions?
Yeah, just like a follow-up on that one. Do you think this bill and existing legislation would be enough to cover artificial intelligence around social services, or do you think there needs to be a AI-specific act that deals with this issue?
Well, I can't claim to be expert in AI. I don't know if any of us are at the moment. Speaking broadly, it's going to permeate everything across all areas of government services, so there's going to need to be an holistic response to it. As far as this bill goes, it is quite explicit that any automated process must have human oversight and a human check during the process, and that every client who gets a debt notice must be notified if it has been automated and have appropriate recourse to question it, to find out more information, etc. So at its simplest, it provides a framework for the future and for new technologies.
It's been 2 years since the Robodebt Royal Commission, and the government is well aware of the harm that is being caused to people on income support by not acting on those recommendations. If the question is when would we like to see them implemented, the answer is yesterday, but this bill gives the opportunity for the government to put its money where its mouth is and to actually pass this legislation to show the community and people on income support that when it says that it wants to implement them and accept those recommendations, that it's actually serious about doing so. I don't think we can prioritise one over the other. There was a raft of recommendations from the Royal Commission, and they're all important. The parts of the bill that go to changing the culture of Services Australia in the way that they deal with people on income support are incredibly important. The culture in that department is toxic. People are treated like criminals, and no one on income support should feel that way.
You're recently diagnosed with PTSD. Yeah. How long ago?
Can you hear me at all?
Yeah. How old are you?
I'll give it another go. The idea too that the government is considering or is open to pursuing debts back as far as 1979 is also ludicrous. I challenge anyone standing here today to have records going back 20, 30 years. So all of the elements of the bill are important. And again, this is an opportunity for Labor to show that it meant what they said when they said they accepted those recommendations, and it gives them an opportunity to implement them now. I suspect you probably got none of that.
I think we might wind it up now. Thank you for your forbearance, and thank you to everyone who's come along. And I think Economic Justice Australia should be singled out in particular for doing a lot of fabulous work. Remember, they're a peak body for a group of legal organisations, and they all do a great job of trying to help people and protect people from what is still a completely unsatisfactory legislated framework.
Can I say one more thing? Yes. I also want to thank folks with lived experience who are continuing to advocate in this space. I don't think we should underestimate how re-traumatising it is every time they have to tell their story, and they shouldn't have to continue to tell their story 2 years on, and that's another reason why the government needs to act.
Hear, hear. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.